You know their music. The songs that played at family reunions, slow dances, late-night drives when the city was quiet and the windows were down and everything felt like it was going to be all right. But you don't know what it cost them, what happened behind the hits, what they lost when everything fell apart, and how some of them never came back from it. These are 10 R&B groups and the tragedies that changed everything. And number 1 is the story that will stay with you long after this video is over. Number 10, New Edition, the $1.87 check, 1983. 5 boys from the Roxbury housing projects in Boston, Massachusetts. The youngest was 12 years old. They had been rehearsing with a discipline rare for kids their age, winning talent show after talent show, until producer Maurice Starr discovered them in 1983 and signed them to his Streetwise Records label. They recorded their debut album, Candy Girl. The title track hit number 1 on the R&B chart and the UK singles chart simultaneously. Then they went on tour across the country, arenas, sold-out shows, screaming crowds. And when the tour was over, Maurice Starr dropped them back off at their homes in the projects and handed each of them a check. Tour budget and expenses were given as the explanation. The amount on that check was $1.87. $1.87. For everything. Tour budget and expenses, Starr told them. That was his explanation for why 5 boys who had just sold millions of records were being dropped off in the projects with less than $2 each. They fired Starr, sued Streetwise Records, won the case, and signed a major deal with MCA. Starr walked away and created a new group formatted exactly like New Edition, but with white teenagers. That group was New Kids on the Block. Starr made millions from the idea he had stolen from 5 black boys from Boston who were still trying to figure out how to pay their bills. New Edition never stopped fighting. Not for their money, not for their dignity, not for their name. Bobby Brown was fired in 1986. They split into 3 separate factions in the early 1990s. 2 members warred over the group's trademark for years. And through all of it, none of the 5 originals ever saw the full financial return their talent deserved. 5 boys from Boston gave everything they had to American music, and the industry handed them $1.87 in royalties and a lesson about who this business was actually built for. Number 9. The Bar-Kays, The Plane Crash, December 10th, 1967.
I'm the son of a bitch!
On the morning of December 10th, 1967, the Bar-Kays were teenagers. The oldest had just turned 20. They had grown up together in Memphis, Tennessee, started playing clubs as kids, and caught the attention of Stax Records, the same label that was redefining Black American music out of a converted movie theater on Macklemore Avenue. Their debut instrumental Soul Finger had already cracked the pop top 20. They were Otis Redding's backing band. They were touring with the biggest soul singer on earth. They were poised to become Stax's next breakout stars. Then they boarded a plane at noon in Cleveland, Ohio, and headed to Madison, Wisconsin, for that night's show. James Alexander was supposed to be on that flight. There was not enough room, so he took a commercial flight instead and was going to meet them when they landed. Ben Cauley was seated directly behind Otis Redding, who was strapped into the co-pilot's seat. 3 miles from shore, in rainy, foggy weather over Lake Monona in Wisconsin, the plane went down. When it hit the water, Ben Cauley was thrown clear of the wreckage and clung to a seat cushion in the freezing lake until rescuers arrived. He was the only survivor. 4 of his bandmates, Jimmy King, Ronnie Caldwell, Phelan Jones, and Carl Cunningham, died in that water alongside Otis Redding, along with their 17-year-old valet, Matthew Kelly. The band members were 18, 19, and 19 years old. 5 people gone in a single afternoon. James Alexander and Ben Cauley rebuilt the Bar-Kays from scratch with a new lineup. releasing music through the 1970s and 1980s, and eventually being inducted into the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame in 2015. At the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, the same city where the doomed flight had taken off, two sections of fuselage from Otis Redding's plane are on permanent display. Otis Redding's name is still printed across the wreckage, clear and vivid as the day it was painted, a reminder of what that morning took. 4 teenage boys and a 26-year-old soul legend who had just finished recording his greatest song 3 days before he died. Number 8. Jodeci, The Collapse, 1990s.
Can you stay?
They were the baddest group in R&B, 4 young men from North Carolina, 2 sets of brothers, the DeGrate brothers and the Haley brothers, who drove from Charlotte to New York City with a 29-song demo on 3 cassette tapes, found the address of Uptown Records in a phone book, walked in off the street, and walked out with a record deal. Forever My Lady in 1991, Come and Talk to Me in 1992, Cry for You, Feenin', My Heart Belongs to You. They sold over 20 million records in the space of 4 years and made every other R&B group in America reconsider what they were doing. Then the machine that built them began to eat them alive.
You can stay with Jodeci tonight, and we can get...
Casey Haley was in a relationship with Mary J. Blige that she would later describe to a BBC reporter as the Ike and Tina of the 1990s on the low, a private hell. Devontae Swing was accused of sexual assault, charges that were eventually dismissed, but he was never the same after it. His home was burglarized, his drinking worsened. In 2010, a video circulated online of Devontae Swing being arrested at a Subway restaurant in Burbank, California, stumbling, crashing into tables, falling on the floor, unrecognizable as the man who had produced some of the most sophisticated R&B records of the decade. Casey and JoJo's reality show Come Clean in 2010 documented their struggle with alcoholism in real time. JoJo collapsed on stage multiple times. Casey's voice, once one of the most powerful in the genre, was visibly damaged from years of substance abuse. Jodeci reunited in 2014 after an 18-year recording hiatus and released The Past, The Present, The Future. The album reminded people what they had been capable of when they were at their peak. But the peak of 1991 to 1995, 4 years of records that redefined an entire genre, had been followed by 2 decades of addiction, legal trouble, public breakdown, and survival. Devontae Swing once had Madonna, Timbaland, Missy Elliott, Stevie J, and a roster of future legends all signed to his swing mob imprint. He had built an empire while still in his 20s, and then he lost it, piece by piece, deal by deal, until all that remained was a viral video in a fast food restaurant and the memory of what he had once been capable of creating. Number 7. The Temptations. 3 original members dead, 1973 to 1992. Paul Williams was a founding member of the Temptations. He was there from the beginning, from the talent shows in Detroit in the late 1950s, from the early recordings that went nowhere, from the moment David Ruffin joined and everything changed. Williams was the group's original lead singer and their choreographer. He designed the stage movements that became one of the most imitated acts in the history of popular music. But sickle cell disease was destroying his body, and alcoholism was destroying everything else. In 1971, he was asked to leave the group he had helped create. On August 17, 1973, Paul Williams was found dead in a car parked in an alley in Detroit. A gun was by his side. The official police ruling was suicide by a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but the circumstances have been disputed for decades by his family and investigators, who noted that Williams was left-handed, yet the gun was found in his right hand. He was 34 years old. David Ruffin was fired in June 1968. His cocaine addiction and his ego had made him impossible to manage. He never stopped trying to get back. He crashed Temptations concerts, grabbed the microphone from Dennis Edwards mid-song, and sang "Ain't Too Proud to Beg" before security could reach him. He had scored solo hits, but nothing that gave him back what he had lost. On June 1st, 1991, an acquaintance drove him to the door of a Philadelphia hospital and left him there. He was pronounced dead of a cocaine overdose. He was 50 years old. Then, on October 5th, 1992, Eddie Kendricks, the soaring falsetto behind Get Ready and The Way You Do the Things You Do, died of lung cancer at 52. He had been a lifelong smoker and had urged children publicly not to smoke. 3 original Temptations, dead within 19 years of each other. Paul Williams at 34, David Ruffin at 50, Eddie Kendricks at 52, and Melvin Franklin would die from a brain seizure in 1995. Of the classic mid-60s lineup that made My Girl, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, I Wish It Would Rain, and Papa Was a Rolling Stone, only Otis Williams is still alive. He is 84 years old. He has outlived every one of his brothers, and he is still out there, still touring, still calling the group The Temptations, carrying the weight of all of them. Number 6. TLC, Left Eye, April 25th, 2002. They were the best-selling American girl group of all time. 65 million records sold worldwide. 4 Grammy Awards. Crazy Sexy Cool in 1994 is still considered one of the greatest R&B albums ever recorded. And behind every moment of it, behind every lyric and every visual and every concept, was Lisa Left Eye Lopes, the creative force who wrote more than anyone else, designed their image, directed their vision, and made TLC a cultural phenomenon rather than just a singing group. Without Left Eye, TLC was an R&B act. With her, they were something that happened to a generation. On April 25, 2002, Lisa was in Honduras on a spiritual retreat, fasting, meditating, filming a documentary about her journey, searching for something she could not find in fame or money or the chaos of the music industry. She was 30 years old and trying to figure out who Lisa Lopes was when she was not Left Eye. Weeks before she died, a van she was traveling in accidentally struck and killed a 10-year-old boy named Bayron Fuentes Lopez, the same last name as Lisa. She cradled him on the way to the hospital. She paid for his funeral. She told the documentary camera that she believed a spirit had made a mistake, that it had taken the boy when it should have taken her. 3 weeks later, she was driving down a road near La Ceiba, and the SUV she was in flipped multiple times. Lisa Lopes was dead at the scene. T-Boz and Chili finished the 4th TLC album and released it 7 months later. 3 tracks featured Lisa's voice. They dedicated the album to her memory and made clear from the beginning that TLC would never be a trio again. They have performed as a duo ever since, and the space on that stage where Left Eye used to stand has never been filled, not because they could not find someone else, but because they understood that what she brought to that group was not replaceable. Honoring her meant living with the absence, and that is exactly what they have done every time they step onto a stage. Number 5. Boyz II Men, Michael McCary, 2003. His voice was the foundation, the deep, resonant bass that anchored every Boyz II Men harmony from the bottom, the voice that made End of the Road and I'll Make Love to You and On Bended Knee feel like they were built on solid ground. Michael McCary was one of the 4 original members who formed in the hallways of the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts, and for over a decade he was the bass note under everything the group did. Then the back spasms started, small at first, then stronger, then more frequent. Then a doctor told him that a nerve in his sciatica was locked in place, and that if he stepped wrong, it could sever completely. There was a possibility he could be paralyzed. Michael McCary kept his diagnosis secret from everyone, from his bandmates, from his family, from the public. He kept performing while his body was failing underneath him. Fans noticed a cane appearing in his hand more and more frequently on stage. Some thought it was a style choice. part of his persona. It was not. In 2003, Michael McCary left Boyz II Men. No announcement, no explanation, no public farewell. He simply stopped being there. For 13 years, nobody outside his closest circle knew why. Then in 2016, he sat down with Iyanla Vanzant on OWN and said it plainly, "I have MS. It sent me into like a depression, multiple sclerosis, a disease he had been living with since his early 20s, silently, while making some of the best-selling R&B music in history." What made this story even more painful was what followed the diagnosis becoming public. McCary said he felt abandoned by his bandmates when his health declined. "If I had to sum up what I got from my brothers in Boyz II Men, I would have to say betrayal, a broken bond," he told Iyanla. "At this point, we don't even talk." The men he had made music with since high school, the brothers he had stood on stage with for 2 decades, were strangers to him now. As of 2025, Michael McCary has remained largely retired from performing due to the severity of his MS. Boyz II Men continue to tour as a trio, Nathan Morris, Wanya Morris, and Sean Stockman, without the bass voice that anchored everything they built. The crowd still sings along, but the foundation is missing. These are not just stories about music. They are stories about what happens to people when the music stops, when the label stops calling, when the tour ends, when the hits dry up, and the industry that once couldn't get enough of you suddenly can't remember your name. The top 4 on this list carry the heaviest weight: a hit and run that killed a lead singer and his pregnant fiancée, 2 brothers dead 16 months apart, a voice paralyzed at the height of its power, and a woman who built one of the greatest girl groups in history and died at 32 before she ever saw justice. If rhythm and legacy means something to you, subscribe right now. These stories deserve to be told, and we are not done yet. Number 4. H-Town Dean Connor. January 28, 2003. H-Town was 3 young black men from Houston, Texas, twin brothers Dino and Solomon Shazam Connor, and their friend Daryl G.I. Jackson, with harmonies so tight and voices so smooth that they sold over 8 million albums worldwide without ever signing to a major label. They were on Luke Records, Luther Campbell's independent label, and they built their entire career on the strength of the music alone. Knockin' Da Boots, in 1993, hit number 1 on the R&B chart and peaked at number 3 on the Hot 100 for 7 consecutive weeks, becoming the most successful single of that year. Dean Connor was the lead, a smooth, powerful tenor who could make a song feel sensual and soulful and sincere all at once. Then, weeks before he died, H-Town released a music video for Emotions. In the video, Dino's character dies in a car accident. On the night of January 28, 2003, Dean Connor and his pregnant fiancée Tessa Weissman had just left his recording studio in Houston. They were heading home. An SUV ran a red light and slammed into their car. The SUV that ran the red light was driven by Juan Alberto Diaz, who fled the scene but was later arrested, charged, and prosecuted for the crash. Dean Connor was 28 years old. Tessa Weissman was 22. Their unborn child died with her. Dino left behind a daughter from a previous relationship. She is the only part of him that survived that night. Shazam Connor had to bury his twin brother. They were born together, grew up together, dreamed together, made music together, and now Shazam had to figure out how to exist as one half of something that had always been whole. H-Town released one final album in 2004, finishing the record they had been working on when Dino was killed, releasing it in his honor. Shazam and G.I. still perform at 1990s R&B reunion shows. Sold-out crowds, fans singing every word, but there is an empty space on that stage and a voice missing from every harmony. That is not a comeback story. That is a survival story. And sometimes survival is the hardest thing a person can do. Number 3. Levert, Gerald and Sean, 2006 and 2008.
Woke up this morning.
Gerald Levert was one of the most gifted R&B singers of his generation, a man who inherited a voice from his father, Eddie Levert of the O'Jays, and then did something remarkable with it, building his own legacy rather than living in the shadow of the one he had been handed. Levert, the group he formed with his brother Sean and their childhood friend Mark Gordon in 1985, produced hits like Casanova, Pop, 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 Pop Goes My Mind, and Baby I'm Ready. Gerald also built a solo career that included writing and producing for Patti LaBelle, Barry White, and Stephanie Mills. He was everywhere, touring, recording, performing, delivering hit after hit. On November 10, 2006, Gerald Levert was found dead in his home in suburban Cleveland. He was 40 years old. The coroner found 6 different prescription drugs in his system: Vicodin, Percocet, Darvocet, Xanax, and 2 over-the-counter antihistamines, all legal, all prescribed, all deadly in combination.
That I got was right.
Gerald was not trying to die. He was trying to manage pain, trying to sleep, trying to cope with the relentless pressure of a career that had been running at full speed for over 20 years. Nobody around him had realized how dangerous it had become until it was already too late. His father, Eddie, who had performed with Gerald, recorded with him, shared stages with him, had to bury his son. His brother Sean performed at Gerald's funeral, changed the words of Dance With My Father to make it about Gerald, standing in front of a grieving room and singing the most painful song of his life. Then less than 16 months later, Sean Levert was gone too. He was in Cuyahoga County Jail in Cleveland, serving time for failure to pay child support. He had been there 1 week. The Cuyahoga County coroner determined that Sean Levert died of complications from severe coronary artery disease. His heart, already weakened, gave out under the combined stress of incarceration, high blood pressure, and the withdrawal from the anti-anxiety medication that had simply stopped when he was booked. The medical staff at the jail did not move fast enough. Sean Levert was 39 years old. Gerald died from a fatal combination of too much medication. Sean died from undetected heart disease pushed over the edge when his medication was abruptly stopped. 2 brothers, 2 deaths, both involving pills, one too many, one taken away too soon. Opposite ends of the same tragedy. Eddie Levert buried 2 of his sons within 16 months. Mark Gordon, the 3rd member of Levert, watched both of his brothers in music die and founded a nonprofit called Saving Our Entertainers' Lives, SOEL, dedicated to raising awareness about prescription drug abuse among performers. But Gerald and Sean are still gone, and Levert, the group that was built on the foundation of family, died with them. Number 2. Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Teddy Pendergrass, March 18, 1982. He started as the drummer, not the singer, the drummer. Teddy Pendergrass joined Harold Melvin's group in 1969 and sat behind the kit, kept the rhythm, stayed in the background. Then the lead singer quit and Harold Melvin made the decision that would change everything. He put Teddy on the microphone. What happened next was not gradual, it was immediate and total. If you don't know me by now, The Love I Lost, Wake Up Everybody, Don't Leave Me This Way. 4 records that defined the Philadelphia soul sound of the early 1970s, each one built around a voice so raw and powerful and emotionally commanding that audiences did not just love Teddy Pendergrass, they were undone by him. Women fainted at his concerts, literally, not figuratively. They were physically overwhelmed by what was happening on that stage.
I'm so sad and lonely.
But Harold Melvin had built a machine that ran on Teddy's voice and was not compensating Teddy the way that voice deserved. The billing said Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. The fans came for Teddy. In 1976, after years of disputes over money and credit, Teddy Pendergrass walked out. He signed with Philadelphia International as a solo artist and within 2 years was bigger than the Blue Notes had ever been. Close the door. Turn off the lights. Love TKO. He was on his way to becoming the biggest R&B star in the world. Then on March 18, 1982, on Lincoln Drive in Philadelphia, Teddy Pendergrass's Rolls-Royce left the road and slammed into a guardrail. When they pulled him from the wreckage, he had a severe spinal cord injury. He was 32 years old. He would never walk again. He would spend the rest of his life learning how to breathe on his own. Think about what that means for a singer. A man whose entire gift lived in his body. The breath control, the physical power behind every note, the way he dropped to his knees mid-performance while the crowd came apart around him. All of it gone in a single moment on a dark road in Philadelphia. Harold Melvin died of a stroke in 1997. By then, most people remembered the Blue Notes only as Teddy Pendergrass's old group. That is how complete the reversal had been. Teddy spent the next 28 years in that wheelchair, learned to sing again with compromised lung capacity, released albums, performed concerts sitting down, his voice thinner than it used to be, but still undeniably, unmistakably his. He never quit. He died on January 13, 2010. He was 59 years old, and the voice that had once made an arena full of people lose their composure was still singing until the very end. Number 1. The Supremes' Florence Ballard, 1967 to 1976. Florence Ballard named the group. She was the one who came up with the Supremes, standing in a hallway in the Brewster Douglas housing projects in Detroit in 1961, looking at a list of names, pointing to that one and saying that was it. She was a founding member, a lead singer, the woman who recruited Diana Ross into the group in the first place. And in July of 1967, she walked into her dressing room at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas and found an extra set of gowns hanging there that were not hers. They were for Cindy Birdsong, her replacement. Nobody had told Florence Ballard this was her last show. Berry Gordy pulled her aside and told her flat, if she went on stage that night, he would have her removed. She was 24 years old. Cindy Birdsong changed into Florence's clothes, walked out onto the stage in her place, and just like that, it was over. What had been building to that moment was years of being pushed to the background while Diana Ross absorbed every spotlight, every interview, every front-page photograph. Berry Gordy renamed the group Diana Ross and the Supremes. Florence and Mary Wilson became background singers in the group Florence had helped start. Florence had also survived a rape as a teenager, trauma she never received help for, damage that compounded everything else she was carrying. She started drinking. She missed rehearsals. She showed up to shows unable to perform, and the industry that had taken everything she had to offer used those struggles as the justification for throwing her away. She was given a settlement. Her attorney later embezzled it. She tried to go solo, signed with ABC Records, released 2 singles. Both failed. No one returned her calls.
And there ain't nothing I can do about it.
By the early 1970s, Florence Ballard, who had sung on 9 #1 hits with the Supremes, who had performed on The Ed Sullivan Show, who had sung for presidents, was living in Detroit public housing and applying for welfare to feed her 3 daughters. She received food stamps. She was planning a comeback in early 1976 when she checked into a hospital complaining of numbness in her extremities. On February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard died of coronary thrombosis. She was 32 years old. Her friends paid for her funeral because there was no money left. The group she had named, the group she had built, the group that had continued making hits and money long after she was discarded, none of that had come back to her. She died broke, died forgotten by the industry that used her, died before her comeback ever had a chance to begin. And the Supremes kept going. They always kept going, without her. This has been Rhythm and Legacy. If this music means something to you, if these stories matter, hit subscribe, because these are the stories that deserve to be told, and the people in them deserve so much better than what they got.